welcome everyone this evening. Thanks for coming to the program. I hope you were here in July. Roy gave an excellent presentation, and I'm sure he's going to do that again tonight. Right now, everyone's muted, and Roy is going to speak for about a half hour or so. He has two guests with him tonight. We have a Euclid council person and somebody from the Friends of Euclid Creek. And once that's done, we'll do a Q&A, and then you can unmute yourself to answer questions when we start the Q&A. So whenever you're ready, Roy.
All right. Thank you, Donna and Carla, the library, for organizing this. And I see this tonight as the second of a series of three anyway. First, beginning with Euclid geology. Why is Euclid special in the geological sense? And tonight going to living things on top of all that geology. And the third I see sometime in the late winter or spring as more of a seminar maybe on possibilities for renewables generation within the city of Euclid, and also then establishing one or more microgrids. It's time to talk about that because the price is coming down and the technology keeps improving, and it's possible for entities such as the city or others within to think about renewables generation and microgrids. So we'll see if we can pull that off for the spring. But tonight we have Euclid Ecology. I'm calling it Past, Present, and Future. And I will talk for 25 minutes, half hour, I believe. And then we'll bring in Christine McIntosh, Councilwoman Christine McIntosh, who will talk about what's going on with the City Council Sustainability Committee and other things that she is doing on her own regarding the greening of Euclid, and that will tie in very well. And then if Kelly Butowski comes on tonight, Kelly is president of the Friends of Euclid Creek, and I'm hoping that she'll be able to bounce what is said tonight off of the perspective of the Friends of Euclid Creek. Past, present, and future. Let's start with the present for a little bit. And I want to say two things about the present right at this point. And that is that we have a fair amount of ecological diversity or habitat diversity in the city of Euclid, naturally speaking. Of course, the settlement, what we are today, has kind of changed all that. But if you just talk about us as a place, we are an above average place for ecological diversity within the state of Ohio or on the south shore of Lake Erie. There are several ways to look at it, but there are 5 inherent features that give us a fair amount of diversity. One is a 300-foot range in elevation from Lake Erie up to the highest point. You can see my cursor right down there at the Welsh Woods area, on top of the Welsh Woods area of the Metro Parks Reservation. And that 300 feet is enough to have a slight bit of ecological variation when you consider species representation. That is those growing at 570 feet on Lake Erie. If you're dealing with scores and scores of plant and animal species, they'll be a bit different than the diversity encountered up on the escarpment, okay? And adding to that is the sharp transitions in elevation that we have. From the beach up to the top of the bluff is a small one. The big one is from the terrace, the St. Clair Terrace, up to the top of the escarpment. That's 120, 130 feet. And that sharpness makes a difference. We have a range of habitat substrates. I talked about those in geology, our different sandstones and the shale, the glacial moraines, and the beach itself. The sand of the beach is that range. And then we all know about our relatively warm, wet winds that come off the lake all year round. We notice them most in the winter when the hill area of Euclid becomes part of the snow belt. And once again, on the average, that will make for a slightly different composition of species of trees and shrubbery and low plants on the escarpment and down on the lake plain. Okay, and we can then talk about, with those natural distinctions, then we can talk about 4 terrestrial habitats. I say terrestrial because I want to leave out what's in the lake, what's in Euclid Creek, and some of the other small streams. But our 4 terrestrial habitat zones would be the shoreline, the lake plain, the terrace, and the escarpment. For those reasons that I mentioned before, they're all slightly different. And just a bit of color in here. So a geological profile of Euclid, if you could cut Euclid like a pie and take half of it away, right up and down East 222nd Street. So a north-south cut, and we're looking then at Euclid through the profile of East 222nd, and over on the left is the east branch of Euclid Creek, which flows basically to the west, flows east-west. So it's a deep valley in there. The vertical scale here is highly expanded. And then we have the escarpment, or the hill, with the Euclid mooring on top, Chardon Road sitting on the Euclid mooring. Then we go down to Euclid Avenue, which is at the base of the escarpment, at the head of the terrace, and on down to basically the Lakeland Freeway, or the tracks. The CSX tracks are right on the edge of the, right on the edge of the terrace here. And then our till plain or lake plain, and then the beach, of course, there. And a few snapshots of things going on. All right, let's go to the past. And I'm relying on this for a paper published by Catherine Flynn, and 2 others. And Katie is a botanist at Baldwin Wallace University. And the 3 authors and some students went through surveyors' notebooks from 1796, 1797 on up until about 1800. And where they could, they got the notes made on timber. Timber was very important economic resource for the early settlers. And so the surveyors were required to make observations on timber or trees along their survey transects. They didn't always do a good job, but it's readable. And from all of that, the numbers tallied up to the beech maple forest. This is Cuyahoga County now, in 1800. Beech maple forest with, as you see, almost half of the trees recorded were beech, okay? Fagus grandifolia. And the maple part of the beech maple forest was a lot smaller. You see just, I don't know, 20% or so. And then the Castanea dentata is chestnut, which are gone entirely. Fraxinus is ash. And then, you know, a whole range of other trees, but in small quantities. This is probably observer error. Okay? And then we have quercus, or oak. And oak then, after the beech trees, were the most numerous. The thing about the beech is that it's all one species, American beech, and the oak is a whole range of different species depending on ecological zone and some of these factors like elevation, dampness, and the like. Okay, so that's what we had in 1800. And just to show you what they did, this is a an abstraction of one of the figures in the article, and you see that it's a bunch of lines. Sometimes they cross, and these are the lines represent the notes of the surveyors as they were doing transects, that is either going north, south, or east, west. So you see Euclid Township outlined in green there, and the black is no data. So along the lakeshore, they were going quickly. They didn't record very much, but well, they didn't record very much for Euclid, but you can see that Euclid and a few other townships at least had some of these records, okay? And so beech trees always come out, maples to a lesser extent, and then the oaks are the bright red. They come out here. So we would like to have better data, but this comes from 1797, so we really can't complain. To bring this up a little more, see that there were some observations made along the lake plain, and so there is some black walnut recorded, and well, other kinds of things. But I want you to see what Katie Flynn and her students and colleagues did with these early surveyors' notebooks. I did the same thing myself for Euclid Township, and it was interesting because they sometimes recorded the very minor species such as tupelo and cucumber magnolia, along with the bigger ones. So if you really read into this, some of this, we had a great diversity of trees, a very great number of species. All right, so that was the past, and let's go to the present, 2014. And on the right, the pie chart represents measurements taken or counts taken in metro parks reservations, okay? Not, the urban canopy in Euclid or Shaker Heights, but what exists kind of natural in the metro parks. And you see that the beach, the green, is, nearly extirpated. It's nearly gone. There are no new beech trees growing in the area, or that they don't mature. It's difficult for beech trees to survive in a disturbed area. And that's what we are. Taken over are maples, and not the sugar maples, not the sugar or rock maples, the real slow growing hard ones, but the fast growing ones that tolerate disturbance. In Euclid, that means silver maples. In other areas, that means red maples, but they're all in a class that you could call soft maples as opposed to the rock maple or sugar maple. And then the other has widened out a lot. The oak is very much reduced, and ulmus is elm. And so there are still in 2014 in the reservations some elm trees. And Fraxinus is ash trees. And, there are many fewer of them now than there were in 2014. All right, so past and today in terms of what you can expect naturally for trees. Now, let's take stock of the urban canopy in Euclid. Okay, I have this nice Google Earth shot. So if you can see my cursor here, most of our trees are along the escarpment just above Euclid Avenue, which is right here. And then up Euclid Creek, the main branch to our border with South Euclid at Welsh Woods, and then the east branch to our border with Richmond Heights in this area, okay? This is a band, this I'll show you is 400 acres of woodland, and this adds at least another 200 acres, maybe 300 acres to it. So we can talk about 700, 600, 700 acres of forest within the city of Euclid well, we'll get into it. And then outside of that, we have a few little reserves here and there. There's this very interesting one that is on the east side of East 250th and over by Benton Avenue leading to 260th there. This is the biggest residential wooded area in the city. The north side of the golf course has a lot of trees. Sims Park used to have more trees. It's been cleared out. There's the leafy area of Edgecliff here. And then just pockets here and there. Some, where we lack trees, let's now go to where we lack trees. The industrial area, of course, and it should be no surprise that, look at this, the area between East 222nd and East 200, that residential area that was redlined back in the 1930s has never recovered from being basically let go in a number of ways. And it is, it is the area most in need of help in many ways, including trees in our city. See the golf course, you drive down Babbitt Road, or East 250th, and it looks like there are a lot of trees, but it's a golf course. So there's a lot of trees along Babbitt, but not so many. Okay, that's just a bird's eye view here. And I see. If you look to the upper right, I want to focus now on Green Creek, which is in this area here. It's hidden by my pictures here, but this is a 20-acre ravine that's all its own on the border with Cleveland, Upper Valley Road. And some of you here tonight helped with a tree inventory, a forest inventory that we did back in 2015. There's a picture of 2 volunteers working here. And at that time, we were able, with a lot of help from Dominion Energy, a watershed mini grant, Western Reserve Land Conservancy, the Northeast Iowa Regional Sewer District, contributed to the success of a survey that ran for, I think, 3 weekends. And we observed 999 trees, didn't get the 1,000th tree in there, that were larger than 12 inches. And so when all was said and done, we added them up, and wouldn't you know it, that oak was the most frequent, by far the most frequent, maple, then, and a lot of sugar maple in that valley. Tulip trees were surprisingly numerous. Tulips were in the original forest a minor tree, but they are, holding their own here. And cottonwood down by the water, it was, cottonwood is a wet dwelling tree. And then, small numbers of other things here, okay? But still a pretty diverse 20-acre forest. And if we can take what we found in Green Creek, we can say some things about it. For these 20 acres, 999 trees, we can compute that they sequester annually 18 tons of carbon in the form of carbon dioxide, and their roots take in about 360,000 gallons of stormwater. And that right there then is a $12,000 value for water not being delivered to the treatment plant for treatment, okay? Now, if we expand that, I haven't been able to survey the entire forested area along the escarpment, but it's outlined. You can see the green outline right over the escarpment. And I'll go to an aerial view. So you see the dark trees, 400 acres. And if we extrapolate, given those statistics we found in the 20 acres of Green Creek to 400 acres, that those trees sequester 360 tons of carbon annually, 7 million gallons of stormwater, for a value of $240,000, just in keeping stormwater out of the storm sewer system. Now, let's go to the future. This is what I want to spend most time on tonight. And I want to talk about homeowner tools that are emerging. Some are kind of standard, but they're wonderful tools that individual households can use to help them green residential properties. And that's the story of the future, I think. And I'll make an analogy here with renewables generation, especially solar. When we think about how most solar is generated these days, solar power, it is in utility scale solar arrays, solar farms, okay? But the price is coming down so much that residential solar starts to make more sense in some ways, in some areas. The regulation is now as much of a problem as is the price of the equipment itself. But where this is going, at least in part, is that it's now possible for individuals to generate solar power, small wind to some extent. But let's talk about solar. So the analogy I want to draw is that with computers, we started out with mainframes, and then they got smaller. Finally, now we all have personal, and they're down to the size of phones. The price come down, the size come down, and you can expect the same thing is going to happen for solar here. And in the meantime, for computers, it's the internet that comes up to link all those computers. And it's, of course, the grid and microgrids that come up to link various solar arrays. All right, there's the big analogy for the night. Now, there are a couple of things we can do here. And one is naturalize your lawn. And if you do this, you can achieve lower maintenance costs, and you can rid the environment of some chemicals, and you can help diversify species and build habitat here. And now, do you practice what you preach? Well, I mow once every 2 weeks anyway in the summer, so I'm a low mow guy, if not no mow. But let's delve into this a little more deeply. I'm going to present a series of slides that are not mine. They are from Judy Semrock, who's a botanist at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. She assembled the materials on these slides. And my email address will appear at the end of this presentation. And if you want these online resources and other things, email me and I'll get them to you. I'm just going to blow through the books here tonight, and then the basic online resources, okay? And then there is groups that try to get homeowners together for communal plantings and the like. So Ecological Landscape Alliance resources, and then seed and plant resources. There are quite a lot of things out there, okay? So once again, my email address will appear. email me and I'll get you these links. All right, now I want to spend a little time on rain gardens, and that's because there is a great resource in our region now, and it's the Master Rain Gardener class that is supported by Cuyahoga Soil and Water Conservation District and the Chagrin River Watershed Partnership. They've held a number of these. Now they're all online, and the next one is scheduled for spring 2021. I just completed the fall class, and it was very informative. And, you know, I have to admit that it's been hard for me to do this, to stop thinking about neatness in my yard and the same thing that everybody else has. But if you allow yourself to think a little freely, you can come up with wonderful things. And the advantage of a rain garden is that you are keeping stormwater out of the stormwater system. You are taking gutter runoff and putting it on your rain garden. And, you know, the native plants, they really are wonderful, and it's so much fun to watch the pollinators come and use them. Okay, now I want to talk about the Euclid Shade Tree Commission. And we are starting to do some things a little differently here. And there is a component where we try to really reach out to homeowners to make resources available. So I want to go through these. And this is not official, but I've designed a Euclid Shade Tree Commission logo there that has 2 oak leaves on it. Okay? And the one on the left is the chestnut oak, and it's a tree of Appalachian origin. And in Appalachia, it's called the ridgetop oak. And then there is the bur oak on the right, and that is called the plain oak by some people. Okay, the distinction is that the chestnut oaks grow in Euclid on the escarpment associated with bedrock, the Euclid bluestone in particular. They don't grow down on the terrace, on the floodplain, or the shoreline at all. Conversely, bur oaks are on the lake plain, especially, and on the shoreline. So in these 2 leaves, we represent the high and the low elevation-wise, and the diversity of our natural environment, at least in terms of trees. Now, I want to be pushing this with the Shade Tree Commission. All right, one of the things we have going now is an online interactive map that we're calling Euclid Distinctive Trees. Once again, this is not the total link here, not the total URL. So email me and I will give you the link that you can go to this map. And right now we have about 100 trees, and a lot of them are up on the escarpment and a lot are down on the lake plain, and there's some in between. There are fewer in between because there are fewer trees, but because we haven't gotten to every place in the city. Okay. Sims Park, I spend time in Sims Park and have recorded a lot of distinctive trees in Sims Park. Okay, this will grow. I hope to have 200 trees on it by the time we call it quits. And it should start, once we get to 200 trees, we should see differences in our older legacy trees between those that are on the escarpment and those that are on the lake plain. Okay, so keep in touch with that. Now, there are other resources just around, and one is a climate change map that's very interesting. You see the link that down there and at the bottom. And so this estimates that in 2080, if there's no change in our emissions, carbon emissions, that we will resemble current Kennett, Missouri. So we head southeast by several hundred miles to get to where we will be. And so it's 9 degrees warmer in the summer on the average and drier. My indication is that we're going to get wetter. So you can't trust all of these, but it's an indication of where we're headed and what kinds of things we should be planting. Now, there are a number of online tools. These are evolving very quickly. So there is the National Tree Benefit Calculator. You put in your zip code and you put in the kind of tree you have. And so on my property, there is a 40-inch pin oak, and it quickly calculates that it provides some amount of benefits every year in terms of shading your house and blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is kind of at the simpler end of the list here, and it breaks it down what it does for you. Okay, more impressive one, more complicated, is iTree design, where you draw a polygon around the roof of your house, and you can put in the trees that exist, as I did in one of those. One of those is that 40-inch oak, that pin, one of those 2 pins there, and it tells you then in relation to what you have, where are good places to plant. Now, unfortunately, a lot of what it outlines there in the nice dark green is not my property. But anyway, you get the idea. Now, and then the best one is provided by the Arbor Day Foundation, part of its community canopy program. And it gives you the choice of, I think, 4 different trees, depending on region here. And so bald cypress, that doesn't apply to us, but red maple does. And so you take one of the trees, you click on it, you bring it over here, and then you start placing it in relation to the polygon you've drawn around your house roof or perimeter, and it starts to tell you how much you can save in heating costs and air conditioning costs per year. And you can do it with more than 1 tree. So here there are 2 trees and they total up to $36 a year in savings. Doesn't sound like much, and okay, but you get the idea. These tools, this is the most complex one that exists, and you can understand what your potentials are given different species and sizes. Okay, very nice. Now, I want to bring this one up because for the Shade Tree Commission, we're trying to get Euclid to become a member of this community canopy program. It takes a little bit to set it up, takes an entry fee, but once you do, then individual residents can apply for trees and you get them basically for free delivered to your door. And this is the way we begin to increase the canopy, the urban canopy in Euclid, is by getting individual residents to plant trees on their own residential parcels, okay? And other groups involved as well. But this is a very strong program that I hope next fall we are participating in, maybe even the spring. Okay, the last of these that I want to bring up is called precision conservation. And this is my favorite because I'm involved with it. And it is everything that I've shown you, but at a higher level. It uses big data and big algorithms to try to understand how you can control stormwater on parcels of various sizes, including your own. Now, the developer of precision conservation with whom I work, Jeff Allenby, gave a presentation to the Doan Brook Watershed Partnership annual meeting last night, and he did a couple of interesting things with a residential area in Shaker Heights. You see up here Shaker Boulevard to the north and Green Road over here. Okay, so a little south of Shaker Boulevard, one of those nice areas of Shaker Heights. Okay, and the blue and red, blue represents minor flows, surface flows of water down streets, some of them going into catch basins. And then the red represents the major flows, some of those going into catch basins. And he has the major catch basin here. And in any event, you get to see the flow of the water through you might say, the infrastructure channels, the streets, okay, and the sewer system. That's not very interesting. But what he's able to do with precision conservation is to understand how residential parcels as a whole break up into mini watersheds. Okay, and so this is how water is flowing, in one parcel or a few parcels. So let's take this green that stretches between 1, 2, 3, 4 parcels. So there is a mini watershed, you might call it, and the droplets represent where the water should be flowing out to storm sewers or whatever. So you take this, and this is where you want to put your rain garden, or right here. You want to put it where you're catching the most runoff off of the yards and everything else, in addition to what you're doing with your own roofs. Okay, so this is a very powerful tool here that we're hoping to bring to Cleveland in the next year. So you can't do this yet, but let's hope that in a year or so that we can have this kind of a tool for the city of Euclid. Now, if you bump that up, oh yeah, so at every one of these places, put in a rain garden. And what's going to go into the sewers? Almost nothing after that, if we could do this. Of course, that's impossible to do everything, but you see what I mean. There are all kinds of possibilities for residents, for homeowners, to be doing small-scale green infrastructure based on these kinds of powerful big data machine learning tools. And he also did it for Canterbury Golf Club in Shaker Heights. And there are the major flow paths, and they all go over to this droplet right there. And if we go there, a Google Earth view of it, you see that there's this channel and into a culvert, into an outfall, and on into the storm sewer over here. Now, what is this area crying out for? A big old rain garden or a bioswale, something like that. So that this machine is telling you for the 20 or so acres of Canterbury Golf Club, you put your bioswale or rain garden right here, you're going to have the maximum effect of keeping water out of the storm sewer system and making a nice irrigated habitat as well. All right, now I want to finish up with our ecological corridors and potential greenways. I mentioned this at the beginning. Euclid, we have these natural corridors, and Euclid Avenue is the one. Euclid Avenue is an old trail used by mammals in traversing the whole region, mammoths originally, bison, elk, and then finally white-tailed deer, and now it's humans, of course, that go along Euclid Avenue. But it's a natural corridor. The beach ridges under which that support the Lakeland Freeway are also a natural corridor, and of course the shoreline is also one. Well, these are quite demolished now, but we can bring them back to some extent. We do have this forested escarpment face, and that is a wonderful corridor that ecologically is much more important than our shoreline, which is all built up. Okay. So our most important corridor to be working on, to be managing for the flow of life beyond humans, is this one here. Now, there is this very interesting one. All these T's are wetlands, okay? Wetlands, small wetlands that exist just in places that were never filled in, old stream ravines that were never filled in. And this one used to traverse almost the entire city. That's not the case anymore because Amazon and Bluestone Business Park have now blocked much of this one. But both of these places, Amazon and Bluestone Business Park, are required to have storm water storage facilities, and they are, big rain gardens essentially. And over the years, they can be modified to be ecologically richer, and we can use them to help create this terrace corridor, almost the whole width of the city. And then we have a very interesting one down here, if you include Memorial Park and the golf course. And remember that forested area east of 250th over to 260th, that's the L8 area here. And that jumps over into the terrace. So it's kind of a U-shaped thing, and it goes all the way up here to the freeway on a set of small greenways, just green spaces in the city here. And then we have two, I think, potential shoreline ones through Euclid Park, and at the rate that we're expanding the Waterfronts Improvement Project, this will go all the way to 250th Street here, and then there's the possibility for another one over on the far northeast corner of the city. So a shoreline corridor or greenway, a lake plain greenway, a terrace greenway, and an escarpment-based greenway. These are the natural connectors that we've lost. We can bring them back to some extent. And with this, I want to turn it over to Christine because she's going to be talking about making some of these connections throughout the city. Okay, so if Christine, if you want to mute yourself or be unmuted. I am going to give you, now, Christine, you tell me when to switch and I'll switch.
Will do.
Okay.
Thank you, Roy. Okay, so good evening, everyone. I'm thrilled to be with you this evening. Very grateful and honored to have been invited to participate. And so I will get started here. So we can leave this slide on right now. And I just wanted to give a little brief background about myself, my role on council, and my role as a sustainability committee chairperson. So I've been serving Euclid's Ward 5 as a council person since 2018. At the beginning of the year, this year, we established council's sustainability committee. The city has not had one in a number of years, and I felt it was time to bring that back, given today's climate and issues pertaining to climate change. So we are committed on council in this committee to reviewing renewable energy options, green space conservation, habitat restoration, recycling education, yard waste education, things of that nature. We are also working to increase access to fresh and nutritious foods, expanding the urban tree canopy, and educating the public on recycling guidelines. And we're going to be doing this, or are doing it in part, thanks to partnerships with groups like Keep Euclid Beautiful, Friends of Euclid Creek, and of course the Euclid Shade Tree Commission, which I am a commissioner on, and we are very glad that Dr. Larick is involved now. So the Sustainability Committee has met a few times thus far this year. We've discussed the yard waste management, trying to educate the public on, not letting those leaves go into the street and clogging up sewers, and instead trying to use those for composting or some other method. We have also spent some time discussing joining the Power a Clean Future Ohio campaign, which we did commit to last month. So we are now a Power a Clean Future Ohio community. And I'll go into that in a minute here. As the committee chairperson, I've brought forward these topics, but I also work behind the scenes to, most recently, it was passed at our last council meeting, a different component to our community residential energy aggregation contract. So next year, residents will have an opt-in option for choosing renewables. So we were able to negotiate that. I believe the rate is lower than fossil fuels. Don't quote me on that. But I believe we are very, very close. So it's essentially going to be the same cost as you're paying now, while helping the environment. So we are also I am working to expand community gardens throughout the city. Not only the one that exists on Milton Drive in Memorial Park, but hopefully adding some smaller like pocket parks and community gardens throughout neighborhoods, so that can shorten the distance for someone who needs to access or grow their fresh foods. Okay, so making the Power Clean Future pledge is going to help prioritize our local response to climate change by committing to lowering our greenhouse gas emissions by 30% by the year 2030. And I'm very happy to say that we're well on pace to reach this goal. This goes back to 2010 levels, and we've already reduced emissions by 17% since then. So moving forward, we'll be looking at converting the city fleet to electric vehicles. We've done a few spot replacements with EVs, so far so good, and we're going to be moving forward hopefully with converting many more of those, and continuing to replace lights in municipal buildings and neighborhood parks with LEDs. And then we're also looking to do some spot LED replacement on the street lights. So that would definitely benefit and result in some cost savings there. So I vow to continue to research and develop policies and plans that add to our biodiversity, kind of add to everything that Roy was talking about this evening, increasing tree plantings and educating our residents on the benefits of rain gardens, rain barrels, and reviewing ordinances pertaining to green infrastructure and responsible land use. I am a graduate of the Master Rain Gardener class as well, and we actually installed one at our home this past spring. So looking forward to seeing that grow next year. So we can change to the next slide. So in addition to all of this sustainability, these efforts, I am very, very interested in updating the city's active transportation network. And this is a reference from a webinar that I watched recently from the Grand Vision. That's a citizen-led vision for the future of land use, transportation, economic development, and environmental stewardship in 6 counties in Northwest Lower Michigan. So as you can hopefully see, they point to these 6 guiding principles that improve multimodal transportation, can help grow local economies, including food and farming, protect and preserve natural environments, include a diverse mix of housing, including affordable options, and of course, increasing sustainable energy use throughout communities. So this is kind of I'm looking at this as a model for how we move forward with the sustainability committee, and everything, kind of factors into making a big difference in the future. So we can move to the next slide. Okay, so the term multimodal transportation, that refers to planning that factors various modes of transportation, not just automobile use, but public transit, walking, cycling, now e-scooters, which the city of Euclid is now allowing, and you might see those next year around town. Many of us probably we're used to relying upon an automobile to get us around, but there are many folks throughout the city and our region that rely upon bus transit or choose to use rideshare programs or bike or walk to work and everywhere that they need to go. So heavy automobile use, especially those short distance trips around the neighborhood, you're still emitting carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, hydrocarbons into the air, which is contributing to pollution. And as we're all very, very well aware this year, how air pollution can affect respiratory conditions like asthma, and now the current pandemic that we're in, COVID-19. So trying to reduce those emissions is good for public health. Okay. So now a lot of my work is focused on utilizing these active transportation or human power to get us to the places that we need to go. And this particular slide shows a nice image of multiple elements that go into creating an environment that supports multimodal transportation, including covered transit waiting areas. You might notice when you drive around the city of Euclid, we don't have a lot of these, but the city is committed to adding them where we can and when we can afford to do them. We do have to pay for them. RTA does not. They'll maintain them, but they don't pay for them. And adding, bike lanes, whether it's a conventional bike lane or a buffered bike lane, having wide sidewalks, and then safe pedestrian crossings, which does include adequate lighting. So next slide. These next 2 slides will depict a couple different streetscape renderings that I pulled from a plan created by the city of Rancho Cucamonga in California. This particular image shows a quaint Main Street view. Looks like they're probably their downtown. It includes, 2 lanes, very condensed, tight, quaint feel to the entire streetscape there. They have bike car sharrows, so shared use of the road, nice wide sidewalks with outdoor dining, and most importantly, some vegetation there along the roadway. So a nice medium-sized tree canopy with what appears to be some type of, rain garden-like plantings or bioswales along the road. And we can move to the next slide, which is a residential view, one with conventional bike lanes. So the cars are separate from bikes, but not buffered. There's on-street parking, and once again, that healthy tree canopy and plantings that may help to mitigate stormwater runoff. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these might be some images that some of us Euclideans are familiar with. These are not from Euclid. This was pulled from a presentation by Mark Fenton. He's a leading public health planning and transportation consultant who advocates for a healthier, more physically active population. And these little sidewalks, I call them neighborhood connectors, but they're, trail linkages. And he has, his work is inspiring me quite a bit, and I'm hoping that we can bring some of these back to Euclid. There are a few notable ones in the city already. Edgecliff and East 219th, there's a nice one there, and then I believe Farringdon at like East 241st or 242nd, around there, and that one could use a little TLC. So I'm going to be working to see where we might be able to find some dollars to rebuild that. It gets flooded quite often, but it's used quite a bit by the neighborhood and youth walking home from school, so pretty important to prioritize that. So, how does all of this fit into Euclid's ecology? I just feel that being mindful of these approaches to planning and public health, city governments, residents, and stakeholders can all be empowered to advocate for updating policies, including active transportation aspects like bike lanes and crosswalks and development plans, or utilizing stormwater mitigation tactics like rain gardens, bioswales, and increasing tree plantings. And it just seems like the more Main Street these efforts are, the more likely we're going to see them expand here in Euclid, which helps create a local environment where people are more conscious of the repercussions of driving, especially those short distance trips, if you're able to walk there or bike there. And also understand the benefits of walking and cycling. And, hopefully people feel that their local officials support development plans that consider community health and wellness. So that is it for me, and happy to bring it back over to Roy to go from here. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Christine. Perfect. Yes. So yes, there is, I will say, I think the fit is there, especially with this last slide, the connectors, as Christine calls them, very important. These are our own corridors for getting people across town on foot, on bicycle, through shortcuts, areas that allow us to just want to get out and walk or get on your bicycle a little more frequently, because that if you can take a few connectors, you can actually make the time of a car and going from place to place around town. So that's why I think this is important in relation to those greenways that I just showed you. Those greenways are places where this kind of thing can be put into effect a little better. But we've got to start with what we have. Christine mentioned a couple. There are several more around town that I use, and they're privately owned. I think that we should be taking an approach to these kinds of neighborhood connectors that we have taken for the waterfront improvement plan. And that is that you have private property that on which you can find a connector, you can forge a connector, and You then get an easement, and I'm not quite sure what it is, but you give the homeowner, the neighbor, some security. The fence that's in the one picture there, you do something for that neighbor, and the neighbor's more likely to grant the easement to what has been a nuisance. An informal nuisance can become a kind of formalized connector. Okay, that's where we have to start. We've had great luck with the lakefront improvement, waterfront improvements. I'm in on the project, and I have been very pleased to see how many people are using that trail. It's really wonderful. I think we have done a very good means to get people down to the lake and get lakefront improvement away from, the standard lakefront development, and with an emphasis on restaurants and whatever else that developers would do. That will come in the proper places at the time, but we have started in the right place to control erosion and increase access for people on foot and bicycles. Then we go to the bigger things. Okay, Kelly Butowski, are you with us? Is Kelly's name on the screen? I can't see.
Yes, she's there. Kelly, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Kelly, I want to introduce Kelly as the president of the Friends of Euclid Creek and a Euclid resident. And Kelly, in being with us tonight, would you like to comment on anything that has been said in relation to the mission and the current goals of the Friends?
Well, I think okay, let me go back. Friends of Euclid Creek is an all-volunteer organization. For 20 years, we've been working in the Euclid Creek watershed to improve the conditions and to protect it. The Euclid Creek watershed runs from Beechwood all the way down to Neff, so it's a big territory. We work through public education. We like to inform people on the problems in the watershed, and then we tell them how they can help fix it. One of the things that you have talked about, some are out of our preview. We don't build streets and design neighborhoods and houses, but we are very interested in rain gardens, native plant gardens. A lot of people don't know native plants, in addition to trees, will hold water and clean pollution. I guess the closest thing I can tell you about is our native plant garden that we built last year in Sims Park. That's an education and demonstration garden. We hope to have educational talks once it's more up and growing. And we want to demonstrate to the average homeowner how beautiful and functional native plants can be. So they would not only be mitigating pollution, they're mitigating flooding, and they're helping to save pollinators. That's pretty much our linkage there. I like to work in Euclid. I think Euclid is right on the cutting edge. Love what you and Christine are doing. Any way that Euclid can help, Friends of Euclid Creek can help, certainly we would. Also, Cuyahoga Soil and Water does very good digging ditches, as I say. So we work closely with them. You could explore grants. There's many, many things that can be done. I think public education that's your bedrock right there. You need to educate people what is going on, what's the problem. I personally, and I know other people are getting very concerned about climate change. I know you talked about that a bit. If we don't stabilize our waterways were going to be flooded out. And they do need to be stabilized. And Cuyahoga Soil and Euclid Creek volunteers are working on that even today, and tomorrow they're doing, so they have done something in the wetland preserve in Highland Heights. So I don't know if anyone has any questions. If anyone wants to know more about our organization, you can go to friendsofeuclidcreek@gmail.com and leave us a message.
I presented a lot of information that may be of interest to you. So roylarick@gmail.com if you want more, and Christine's email, you can get through the city website. Okay, let's open it up to questions. Are there any questions?
Just a reminder, you may have to unmute yourself to ask a question, or you can put a question in the chat box.
Christine, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't totally understand the connectors. I saw the picture. It looked like a little road going to nowhere to a little box. I couldn't tell. I just don't understand that concept.
So the neighborhood connector would be an extension of the sidewalk, really. So the city of Euclid has really, really great sidewalk coverage overall. I don't think there's very many areas that do not have sidewalks. So that is a huge plus for encouraging people to get out and walk around and take those strolls around their community. But there are, and while a lot of the street networks are also connected, being able to cross over from 185th down like Nauman all the way to 222nd, that's a plus too. But there are also residential areas, especially if they're, over by Euclid Creek or over by Euclid Avenue, where getting access to those main roads is difficult. It might be a challenge because of the elevation difference from street level. I always call that area like the hills or hilltop area. Or Euclid Heights, just to throw a term out there, but because it's a little bit different from over here, in the middle and north side of the city. So the neighborhood connectors would be, it doesn't necessarily have to be a concrete sidewalk or an asphalt path. I know a lot of folks used to call the neighborhood connector over on Farringdon the cinder path. It doesn't necessarily have to be that established. It could be, just a tiny pebble path that connects non-connecting neighborhoods. I'm trying to think of one in particular. Moss Point is an example. They did have a neighborhood connector, but now they don't because of some private property sales and things like that. So they decided to put up a fence, but you used to be able to walk from 219th straight over across to Euclid Park by the senior center. So identifying areas throughout the city where we can connect streets that don't already connect, that would be the concept behind the neighborhood connectors. Does that help?
Okay. Is my screen being shared? Can you see?
It is.
Google?
It is.
Okay. To Farringdon Avenue. So as I was saying, you can go from, let's say Dave's or Shore, Dave's right here, Shore Center Drive, Farringdon, and you can be over to 250th and 260th, on a straight line almost. Let's go, we'll try to find one more here. Let's see if it's recognized. So we have Euclid Park, and Christine was talking about you used to be able to walk from Euclid Park through a series of these connectors all the way to here. And yes, so there's still, I'll see if I can bring it in one more time. Yeah, you can still do this from Edgecliff at East 217th, cut through to 219th Street. What you can't do any longer is along here. But still, this is a very nice cut through to go from, so you can go from 219th all the way to I think it's 203rd on Edgecliff using this cutoff here. Okay, so that's the kind of thing we're talking about. One more, I'm going to try, since you brought this up, Kelly, let me try to do one more. I'll back out so I can get there more quickly. One that I like a lot, 200th, 215th. This one is not, it's so St. Christine School here, now Pinnacle Charter Academy. There is another greenway that goes, let's see if we can pick it out on the satellite. Yeah, it's the old stream. It's the old Lily Creek that's buried. But there is a public greenway from the back of St. Christine's all the way to Goler Avenue, okay? And then it's a little dicey in here and its backyards in here. But these are the kinds of things that eventually could become connectors. And that gets you up to the Lakeland Freeway. So that's not entirely useful. Okay, that's enough of that. What I want to say is, going back to what Christine said and what Kelly was saying, many of us are interested in native plants and bringing back a rich ecosystem, a species diverse urban ecosystem, because this is my dream, and I know it's going to be yours too, to get back to the point where we can get in our cars and go out on, let's say, Euclid Avenue in the summertime, drive down Euclid Avenue and have your windshield full of smashed bugs. Don't we all want that? Any other questions?
Yes, hi, my name is Rebecca. Thank you so much for this presentation tonight. This has been wonderful. I didn't know about the geology one, and I'm interested to look that up on the YouTube for Euclid Library. I recently moved to Euclid this past summer from the Heights, and I've just fallen in love with Euclid. I live in one of the apartment high rises on Lakeshore, and I can see and hear the lake from my window, and it's just been a drastic improvement to my quality of life, and I'm so happy that I moved out here. One thing that I can say that I definitely noticed coming from the Heights was that there are a lot less trees, just generally speaking, in people's yards, it seems to me, especially in that sort of area, Dr. Larick, that you pointed out from 22nd to 200th, where it's just sort of those like rows and rows and rows. And I would just highly encourage any kind of bioswale development on tree lawns or rain garden, milkweed plantings, any of these kind of things that, and other pollinator plants that perhaps even the city could undertake. I think like along those, the tree lawn seems to be like, to me, a really good place to sort of think about doing that. Something specifically that I wanted to talk about, I am car-free for 24 years this year. I'm an avid cyclist and RTA rider and walker. And the Cleveland Lakefront Bikeway is an amazing amenity that we have out here. But I have to say, I think that it could be an area of some growth opportunity. There's portions that are along Lakeshore that have an actual dedicated lane, but then there's parts that don't. And what I experience as a cyclist is that, people just kind of view you as being in the way. And when there isn't a dedicated bike lane, sometimes you kind of are when it's heavy traffic, or at least you're slowing people down, and it makes people angry, and people really can become aggressive with their cars. It's kind of frightening. But I think that, growing that amenity by expanding the bike lanes is just something that benefits everyone everywhere. It benefits cyclists, it benefits drivers, because they don't feel like encumbered by the bicycles. And it's just something that says like, hey, we've got this great thing. You should think about moving out here because our city is really awesome, right? The thing that comes along with bike lanes too, that I often experience is that maintaining them, they get a lot of debris. So there's a lot of like tree stuff and broken glass that can make it also difficult to navigate them. And I don't know, if there's a way to think about that having to be out of position, that like someone comes along and clears that. It always seems to me that those sort of jobs are, there's somebody who would love to have that job. There's somebody who would love to like have an opportunity to be able to, do something like that, and have have viable work. I just, the other thing that I wanted to say about the bike lanes, I think that like having a buffered as a cyclist feels to me like the safest, to really have like some kind of division point. And there were a lot of different things that were portrayed on that one slide as far as like ways to have a bike lane. But I feel like having it be separated somehow feels the most safe. That's just my personal opinion. But yeah, I'm wondering too, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm kind of going on, but there is one other thing that I wanted to say. It's challenging living in an apartment building. One thing that's a real drawback is the lack of access to recycling. And I think that would be an amazing thing to collaborate with the city on, developing some kind of program for that for people who live in apartment buildings. And then just also like, how can we green this apartment building, having proximity to a community garden? I live in a K&D property. It's directly abuts where the new, like the marina is going to go and where the trail is ending. And they just did a huge tear down of, there was like a little sort of wild space that was right there. That was like a bunch of trees, and my housemate and I were pretty bereft to watch them all coming down a few weeks ago. But I understand it's part of the overall expansion of making things more accessible and green. But I feel like that's another opportunity with the city to connect with some of the apartment buildings of like ways to just be more green and offer that recycling. And I feel like there's a lot of ways that it could be a focus and just kind of get people. I feel like the apartment buildings could have bioswales. They could have rain gardens too. But I've talked enough. I thank you so much for this presentation. And yeah, the bike lanes.
Yeah.
Roy, if you don't mind if I respond quickly to Rebecca's comments regarding the bike lanes, I agree. I think I personally would feel more comfortable. And I think having that safety by being buffered, that would encourage more people to ride on the roads and maybe just ride more often. So that is something that I have been kind of pestering City Hall about, is trying to add more bike lanes to the city. I think Euclid Avenue could really, really benefit from having bike lanes as well, considering it's a main thoroughfare that goes into downtown. And I'm sure it's a huge commuter roadway, as is Lakeshore Boulevard. The challenge with both roads, of course, is the amount of vehicle traffic, even though there's a highway that runs right in the middle of our city, for good or bad, it's located there. But I think a lot of people try to bypass the highway and use those roads as more of a scenic route. And I have noticed that, pretty much as soon as you get outside of Euclid, Lakeshore Boulevard narrows down to one lane or 3 total lanes with that center turn lane. But Euclid is blessed to have the larger roadway with sharrows. And I know my husband and I, we bicycle around. He is way more avid and committed than I, but I do get out there occasionally. And the Lakeshore Boulevard, I'm right off Lakeshore Boulevard, and I don't always feel comfortable unless it's like early morning, and sometimes that's not even a good time. So so there's a lot of work that we need to do. We got sharrows on 222nd, that was a bonus, but education on drivers, or education for drivers, that the road is shared. I think that's a huge component. We do have Bike Euclid here. They're a cycling advocacy group that's an affiliate with Bike Cleveland. I think that Cleveland Heights has a Bike Cleveland Heights. You may know that better than I. But so we could be doing, there's always room for improvement. So I think with our advocacy efforts, we are members of Bike Euclid as well. We could be doing more work on that front, or just increasing membership. So then that advocacy, that shared voice is amplified. Trying to think. Oh, the recycling program, great suggestion. I have heard from a few other tenants in apartments, especially those high rises, that there isn't an option there. So I'll have to work with the city to see like how we might be able to get that going. But that's a really good point. And if you're interested, maybe I'll share, if you don't mind, like privately sharing your email address with me through the chat or something, Rebecca, I can send you a plan that I put together recently. I was an America Walks Walking College Fellow this year, and we were tasked with putting together a walking action plan. And my plan was creating Euclid Greenways, which are just, include these neighborhood connecting trails, adding bike lanes to certain corridors, including, like in the industrial corridor, since it's the main workplace, primary workforce hub, to the hospitals, just trying to connect everyone a little bit more. So I'd love to share that with you, and then share contact info for Bike Euclid so we can get you looped in. Sweet, thanks.
Okay. Unfortunately, we're going to have to end the program now. The library building is going to be closing. So thank you everyone for participating. If you want to say a few last words, Roy, but outside of that, unfortunately, we can't take any more questions. And
okay. Well, glad to see you all here this evening. And in regard to one thing that Rebecca said, trees are the answer for almost everything. And you can take them down, but you have to put them back up. And Christine and I are in the process of reviewing Euclid's environmental ordinances. And so we have a kind of a weak tree ordinance, and maybe we can do something about that. Trees die. And but when they come down, when one comes down, one ought to come up. That should be our motto in Euclid. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Roy. Thanks, Christine. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.